Welcome back. This is Daybreak, and thank you for staying with us. The hashtag on X is Daybreak. The SMS code is 22422 at Citizen TV Kenya and at Ayub Abdikadir. We will sample your feedback here in the course of this broadcast, and thank you for staying with us. Yes, Gabriela, you had a point. Please proceed.
I was answering my friend here. You know, to me, Ruto is a movie actor. He's an acting movie in this country. You cannot speak about Mama Mboga and yet you are taxing those Mama Mboga to pay more. And you are telling us that you are reviving our economy. How? While you are silencing the parliament. What we have in the 13 House is a weak parliament whereby they pass laws without even reading those bills. Mm-hmm. I think 1 month ago, there is an MP from, I don't know, Kisii.
Yeah.
He spoke about how MPs come to his office.
Vanas Osoro.
Yeah, in Bomet. He spoke in Bomet how he dishes out, he takes corruption, whereby MPs give him money and then they go for foreign trips. Then how they passed the finance bill. Then you ask yourself, these people, the MPs, they were supposed to represent their people at the constituency level. And they are here being paid to pass laws. So who is defending? Who is representing the Mwananchi? No one. Ruto has made this 13th parliament very weak. They cannot say anything. They're just there to take allowances and to warm their seats there. I don't think if we have a governance problem, but Ruto is the one who is making everything impossible to work in this country. And yet he wants to blame the opposition leader. Raila Odinga is in Bondo. Mulisema aende Bondo. He is now in Bondo. Why are you asking Raila Odinga to speak about the cost of living? While the MPs are the one who passed these laws. When we speak about the cost of living in Nairobi, think of a person who is speaking in Turkana County. If sugar is 200 in Nairobi, in Turkana County it is 300, 400 shillings because it's far. How they get their goods and services, it's very hard. Then you tell me Ruto is making our economy is reviving our economy. No, he's just playing movies. On Monday, I don't know it was Nation or Standard, it was written, our CS, they're not aware what's going on in the ministries. Ruto is micromanaging everything in this country. Even the CS and the PSS don't know what they're doing. And that's why we're saying Ruto should just sit down, plan what he promised during the campaign, or just to do what he wants to do. Because this is total lie and hypocrisy to the people of Kenya.
Yes, Kelvin.
I would like to respond to my friend here, my good friend Ascon, when he misleads us on air saying that the cost of living is an issue, at least as per the opinion of the government. Because the best on how he talks, I don't know, he has not confirmed to us, but looks like he has to fulfill the agenda of the government the way those legislators and senators do. One thing that the country must be aware is that the probability that a politician aligned to Kenya Kwanza will lie is 90% when you give them a microphone. I even don't believe that the 50%, the president said that he's going to give 50% more on the savings. People who have been taking Hustler Fund and they save. It is unlikely that it's coming to be implemented because we have seen many promises that we are given during the campaign, but right now whatever we are receiving is actually the reverse, the exact opposite. 13 years ago, I remember the president, who my colleague here probably supports, but he has not confirmed. The president told us that when you cannot afford fees, when you cannot afford food, when you cannot afford basic needs, unajivunia Kenya kuwa Mkenya kwa njia gani? But right now, he's actually making us not to be proud of Kenya, to be proud to be Kenyans. Because everything that comes out of their mouth is either lie or something punitive. Do you have any law that we can say was formulated between August last year and today that Kenya can be proud of? everything targets your payment. And there is actually no bill that says Ayub should get some pay rise. You know, the reason why you're working here is not for you to afford basic needs only. You are working here so that apart from the basic needs, you can actually afford fees for your children, you can actually pay for some expenses like those, the health and everything, and you can actually save so that you can elevate your family from poverty. But what this government thinks of is that the little you have, we have to take it so that you remain with nothing, so that you, whenever we say anything, you just say, yes, sir. I cannot see anybody independent from the government side whereby they can actually come here and give their views which are not in line with the president's. Everyone has to say something so that at least at the end of the show, they'll not be given a call. Why did you say this on Citizen TV? So what I'm saying is that anybody in the government that supports the government right now cannot give the independent views unless those views have been authenticated from the state.
Okay.
Yes,
yes, Emmanuel.
I'll come to you. The youth population is 3/4 of this country. When you look at the elections, barely 1 year and 3 months later, the youth, you saw a lot of apathy, particularly in the voting.
Kenyans,
yes, that did not come out to the polls. What you're able to perceive on a general overview is that there is that disconnect between the youth and the political class in where are you taking us. So right now, we are in a situation where we have issues in the country, and you are seeing like something like even the mass actions. The majority that you see there are the youth. When things are happening here, it is the youth who are affected. When you're looking at this moment, we are in this space in time as the youth, but some years to come will not be in this space. Who will be on this space, and how will we have effected something that will be different for them so that they tackle even different issues? That will not be possible, Ayub, if we do not get our ear on the ground, particularly in assessing what are the youth talking about? What is their main issue? If you do not listen keenly on what the youth are saying, because even when you listen here, there are different talks coming, different opinions coming out, different perceptions coming about. But to be able to address the issue, particularly of the youth, in the whole aspect of governance, even so that when we go forward, even on matters concerning even the next election, we have a different aspect in matters of even the participation among the voters on that end. We would need to first understand what is the issue currently. And that would not be possible if we just move as we are moving right now in addressing issues, but not really thinking about what are the youth saying? Because we are moving in a way that, unfortunately, may be dangerous for this country. Because when you decide, this is how we will move, this is what we will address, we will give you this and that, but in real sense, I do not connect with it. How will we view the next elections? Because now, even as we move, maybe 5 years later, there'll be another set of voters who would be registered, yes. But how will they be taking up the whole idea of even the democracy aspect? How will they be responding to that if we do not address such pertinent issues right now in matters of connecting first the youth currently, in matters of understanding this is why we move this way in government, this is why we move this way even in the political arena, and that you're just not capital to move these particular leaders to that particular point, but really there is an interest that you play, that you have in this governance, in this administration, because if we do not have that connection, if we leave out that aspect of the youth, these people who are the greatest population within the country, people who are very, very important economic drivers within the country in matters of human resource and everything, and we expect the country to even move forward in matters of economic development, we are really, in lack of a better word, fooling ourselves in the idea that we'll actually make things better without considering this margin within our country.
Thank you. Yes, Mohammed, the other point? I'll come to you, Andrew.
Yes. So, to claim that it was only political, classic Kenyan politics for those in the opposition to speak about the grievances of the people, I think is not being honest. Because if anything, the purpose of why they exist in politics is to voice those concerns. That is why they had sophoreas on their head. There is even a recognition by those in government that we have a high cost of living crisis. That is why today we are faced with a scandal within the Kenya National Trading Corporation. They went and bought edible oil that is set to expire next month at prices which they could at prices which they could not dispose in the market. And you remember the former Trade Minister, Moses Kuria, saying that he will set up Pima fuel dispensers in all areas across the country. There is a recognition that there is a high cost of living. For starters, my colleague asks, what should we do about it? Well, for starters, don't raise taxes at a time when Kenyans are highly complaining about everything rising. Of course, the counter-argument will be we needed to raise the taxes so that we could secure funding to pay back our debts and all of these things. I think there has been constant discussion that there are other ways we could have approached this tax issue, that we could have gone back to our lenders and had a discussion with them. That is happening at the moment because we're borrowing from the IMF and the World Bank to pay back those commercial debts which were collected over the past 10 years. So I think the talk that we will subsidize production and we will do all of these things is one that, if actioned, of course, could help in reducing that cost of living. But for starters, the beginning point should have been, do not go for the paychecks of Kenyans, especially at a time when there are soaring prices of everything, to cushion them to withstand those rising prices.
Yes, Andrew.
First and foremost, I think I need to set the record straight. I do not hold brief for the government. I just try to apply my intellect to the situation and come up with what I believe is objective. Now, look at the concern that is coming from my brother here. I remember during the BBI, and that is why I did not present any document to this current committee, because in the BBI I did a very passionate, and I think you were present, Angel, to the JLAC committee and also the BBI committee on something that was very fundamental to me in the BBI. It was called the new Article 18A, the responsibilities of a citizen. What it tended to achieve was to deal with the software issues, how to ensure that we are patriotic, how to, legislate on how we can make Kenyans understand that Kenya is theirs and that the government is theirs and that they need to own the government, that the government is not something so far away that we need to steal from to become rich. That is what was so fundamental to me in the BBI. That is something that has not been addressed here, and the conversations on this panel seem to highlight it even further. The air of pessimism, the spirit of, it cannot work, the government needs to fail so that then we are vindicated politically. That is what I get from the conversation that comes from almost a good percentage of Kenyans. And that is very unfortunate. To me, I don't seem to understand why we think that nobody acknowledges that the cost of living is high. The president acknowledges this. I do acknowledge that. The opposition alike acknowledges that the cost of living is high. What we don't agree on is how to solve the crisis of the cost of living. And also this points to the problem of expectations. The reason why a number of Kenyans are disappointed in this report is the question of expectations. Okay. People expected, or a good number of us here, expected that when the report comes out, the cost of fuel, for instance, will go down by half. As an intellectual, I will tell you that is not possible because we have so many factors to consider. There are global issues to consider. The cost of fuel cannot just drop because a committee in Kenya has sat down and brought the cost of fuel down. Those are things that are not possible. Now, part of the reason why I think Kenyans should congratulate President William Ruto is because I sat down to read his manifesto. I think people voted for Ruto without reading his manifesto. I took time to read that new manifesto, which I was part and parcel of its generation, and I took time to read the Kenya Kwanza manifesto. By the way, there was a very small difference in these manifestos. And the only reason why I congratulate Ruto is he is the only candidate, or the president I have experienced in my life as a young person, who has been keen on implementing his manifesto, bad or good. When Ruto talked about the housing plan, and Azimio did, nobody thought it was a serious thing. Now they're asking randomly in the streets, Nani Hana Kwao? They didn't know that this fellow talked about building houses all over the country. They needed to know that something was going to be done to get this done. When he talked about dealing with fertilizer issues, he meant it. That's why he's doing it. When he talked about the Hustler Fund, the problem again is with the imagination and the expectations. The Kenyans, or the common Kenyan who supported Ruto, maybe, or perhaps imagined that when Ruto becomes president, there'll be a Hustler Fund, and we'll be having money in our pockets daily No, what I look at as an intellectual is how has the Hustler Fund been established different from all the other funds that have been there initially? There's been the Youth Fund, there's been the Women Fund, subject to corruption all over. But I looked at it and understood that the Hustler Fund was established in a very unique fashion, technology-driven, monitored by Safaricom. I mean, there is very slim chances that there will be corruption in the Hustler Fund.
Okay.
And in the end, should corruption happen, it could only happen at the source, from the exchequer.
Okay.
And those are some of the parameters I look at to establish and to evaluate President William Ruto. I want to assure Kenyans in this seat, as I've done before, that, for instance, if Hustler Fund fails on the way it is being delivered to the people, I'll take the responsibility as a citizen.
And when you talk about the global factors which you have no control over, for example, cited by the government, the denial in the first instance of, for instance, the Russia-Ukraine war having an impact on the global supply chain, and now the sudden acknowledgement, but we have control over the levies and taxes on fuel. If you break down, there are many, and which the president on the 26th of July in 2022 spoke about during the presidential debate, that this is a problem that we must address. But again, after coming to office, that hasn't been the case. Yes, Kelvin, come to you. I'll come to you, Mohammed and Angel. Yes.
Okay, thank you. One thing I want to clarify to our friend here. First, when we air our views, we are not representing the opposition. We are representing what is actually on the ground.
You actually say the opposition represents the people, so that's okay.
Exactly, yeah. Because the way he responds is like we are representing the interest of the opposition. One, when there is a contradiction that happened some time back, I think last month, whereby the CS for Energy was telling us that the global trends for oil and crude oil actually was increasing. At the same time, the central bank was telling us that the oil prices have been reducing. So we were wondering, where was the government getting facts and where was the central bank getting facts? No, remember, this is not Azimio. It was central bank saying that the rates are going down. And then, at the same time also, we realized that everything that goes negative here, Uhuru Kenyatta or Raila Odinga has to be mentioned as the cause. So we start wondering how even is Uhuru responsible for the leaking roof at the JKA, whereby a CS, I'm assuming it is an intellect, like you said, he forms a committee to fix a leaking roof. So we start asking ourselves, supposing the entire building goes down, we'll have all African Union being formed to correct that. So we are wondering, does this government really hear the views of the people? Right now, if any CS goes anywhere, the last time I checked, there was a CS of Murkomen went to Baringo, and the people were, the moment he started mentioning the president, people were making noise. That is the stronghold of the president. So that should be taken into account. So I'm wondering, if the president gets an NIS report every morning of everything that's happening in the country, it is either possible that he ignores what Kenyans are saying through even the NIS intelligence, or the people around him are not telling him the truth.
Okay, but Kelvin, I mean, to avoid here, because the broad brush painting unfairly of the government itself as a professional, and of course you as responsible citizens, is unfair. I mean, when you say the calls of the people have not been heard. For instance, one of the major accomplishments this government has done is the employment of teachers. I mean, that is a great achievement, never done. And more than 55,000 teachers employed by the government. You look at the fertilizer distribution mechanism that they deployed in terms of this reaching the farmers, and the other accomplishments, for example, that the government says it has done. Do you not acknowledge that? Is it for you, scrap heaping that into the dustbin and taking a look at where the government fails alone?
Okay, while we acknowledge those achievements, we are looking at how the life is at the moment and how it was 1 year ago. Would you prefer to live 1 year ago or today?
Well, will you?
You would prefer to live 1 year ago, so that's why we are saying the government is failing us.
Well, will the situation have been better? Because this is generally, again, why I come to this, and to quote what the former Prime Minister had said, and generally this is in agreement with the areas that they have, the committee members agreed upon. He said to create the office of the Leader of Opposition or to formalize the office of the Prime Cabinet Secretary, the people of Kenya have to have their say by the way of a referendum. Whilst he acknowledges the significance of the people of Kenya, who have been placed at the epicenter of every constitutional decision-making process since 2010, seems to be an agreement for this office to be formed. This was not what the Kenyan people have called upon the opposition to lead them in protesting against the government. They needed the cost of living to be brought down.
Yes.
Odinga hasn't been clear, as Martha Karua, who said, if the high cost of living is not featuring in this report, then for her it's a no. For Eugene Wamalwa, he never appended his signature because the cost of living wasn't there. But Odinga seems to be in agreement with the formation of this office, although he says the people's consent must be sought, which anyway is a requirement under the current constitutional dispensation.
Yes.
This is not what the Kenyan people wanted. They wanted the cost of ugali to come down.
Yes.
They wanted to feel the value of the shilling in their pocket. They wanted to have as many as disposable income at their disposal so that they can attend to their duties. Not the creation of positions, is it?
Yes, like I had mentioned earlier, I said that when it comes to politics, it is political interest first before Kenyans' interest. So when it comes to that committee, like my friend said, it was supposed to make those politicians achieve the interest and not really actually what us Kenyans want. And that's why we are saying that, that's why actually the Constitution gives us the mandate of public participation.
Yeah.
Now the problem here with this public participation is that we will air our views, you will air your views, but when the final report comes out, there's nothing like that. The same way to the bill-making process, there is part for public participation. But once you give your views, you realize that it's unlikely that those views will be captured.
So you agree with me that Kenya's political elite is only focused on the interest, not that of the Mwananchi?
Correct.
Yeah. I think I am of the contrary opinion. If you talk to the voter in Kibra, who I have interacted with very closely, or the voter in Kisumu or Mathare, who was on the streets being killed, his interest was not majorly the cost of living. I'll be honest with you. His interest at that level was, why isn't Raila Odinga's view not being listened to at the most crucial place? They actually believe when Raila sits in that place, all their interests will be taken care of. This is what this report is trying to cure. The report is trying to cure the governance issues that have been occasioning these problems. The person there at the ground is not interested in the cost of ugali going down. Actually, the cost of ugali is much lower today. You go to the supermarket, the cost of unga is 130 shillings. When Ruto got into power, it was 200 and something shillings. But everybody's still complaining about the cost of living because it is an easier thing to keep mentioning. However, this person will be more content when Raila Odinga will be sitting on the table. Take it from me that immediately Raila Odinga will assume the position of the official opposition leader. Yeah. There'll be no crisis in this country.
Well, that's why. Listen. Are you then pointing out a problem on the part of the public who seem not to care about the interest, but that of the politicians?
That is my point. The point is there's been a misconception that the public is demanding for something they're not actually demanding for. You know, you remember when Raila Odinga shook hands with Uhuru Kenyatta. At that time, we were very close and supporting Raila Odinga. We didn't like Uhuru Kenyatta. But immediately they shook hands. There was every justification for whatever step the government was taking. This is exactly what's going to happen with the benefit of foresight. In the next 5 months, in the next 5 months, when Raila Odinga will have shaken hands with President Ruto, everybody will look at things differently.
Okay.
And now this is the point I'm trying to make. We need to look at our country in a manner as though we want the best for the country. Look at how the government is doing things. Are they doing things systemically? Are there things they're doing that are not acceptable? We need to call them out in such areas. For instance, what my brother here mentioned about austerity measures. You know, when we talk about government officials traveling, 50 of them, you know, using first-class tickets and things like that. Those are things we can call out the government and demand that really we need to, apply austerity measures so that we bring the cost of living down. But we are not going to expect, for instance, that we are demanding for a referendum on the one hand, and on the other, we are complaining about the cost of living. The referendum is going to go with over 7 billion shillings.
Okay, thank you.
Where are we going to get the 7 billion?
We'll talk about that because you've mentioned a very key point to tie this up to, and that is the handshake in 28 years. Angela, I'll come to you, Gabriela and Mohammed.
No, I think I want to agree with my colleague here, Gabriel, who says that what Ruto is doing is he's acting a movie. And because Kenyans, and to what Ascon is saying, that Kenyans are asking for things that it's like they don't seem to know what they want. But Kenyans elected Ruto because he promised that wataweka pesa mfukoni, mpango ni bottom up, those who will pay taxes are people at the top tier, but that is not the case today. And one thing that even Mohammed will tell you moving on is that education has now become a preserve of the rich. I mean, since when did we as a country put education as a factor that requires those who have money to be able to access it? When Ruto stands on top of cars and says that he admires the leadership of Mwai Kibaki, when Mwai Kibaki was in a wheelchair and from inheriting the government from Moi with nothing, zero cents from the government chest, and he goes on to declare that there will be free primary education. But what does Ruto do? He goes to make sure that education becomes a luxury. And ASCON, we have been on the trenches together, fighting and ensuring that the cost of education is at minimum to a comrade in this country. Education is what has gotten Ruto and his counterpart Rigathi to where they are today. Because of education, they were student leaders. They fought for the quest of this country at that time. It seems they have forgotten all that and coming to put education as a matter of do or die. If you don't have money, you can't access education. Education is what equalizes me. If I had not had an education, I would not be able to sit here with you, Ayub, and have this conversation, a national conversation. And for most of us here, because we do not have access to university. But what I'd urge young people in this country is to ensure that they use the digital platforms, the social platforms to advocate and to agitate. And what we need to also recognize is that we are in a different political environment than it was before 2020. Since COVID-19 and since we are now using more online and digital platforms, it is much more easier to counter and check this government. It is easier to put Ruto in 2021 and a Ruto of 2023. Very easy for that to be compared. And of course, that's credits to my party leader, Uhuru Kenyatta, for ensuring that the digital infrastructure of this country was well laid out, topping number 3 in Africa. And that is something that we young people have a lot of access to. We know how to use that. I want us as young people to use that platform to continue checking this government.
Okay, yes, Emmanuel.
Ayub, we don't have to guess what the common Mwananchi is saying. We can actually go and know that through actually ensuring we do such studies that I'm talking about, particularly the way we do at Polytrack, because Mwananchi is speaking. We are actually guessing here, saying that it is not the price of unga, it is not that, it is not the other. But the Mwananchi is speaking. The problem is, how are we listening? Are we even listening? Because we have the issue that right now we are seeing a lot of things in our eyes. When you look at, recently we released a study, particularly looking at the El Nino rains, before even the onset of them. And the Mwananchi was saying that, in their view, they are seeing that the government, particularly the national, also the county, is not really focused on ensuring that they are safe, particularly because of the rains that were oncoming. We moved into a situation where we were not sure whether the rains were coming or not. The rains are here with us now. 136 lives have been lost. Others are actually displaced. And it is something that was actually marked out by study that was done to be able to pinpoint that Mwananchi is not feeling safe at this particular moment. Right now, we have 136 lives lost. This could be saved in one way or another just by being keen to understand that the Mwananchi is saying, I am not feeling safe where I am. Where I am, there is something that is wrong. But not paying attention, not taking heed of this, we find the Mwananchi in trouble. The perception that Mwananchi is putting themselves in the harm's way. But how will they make the daily ends meet without moving towards where they actually do that? Because the times are tough in perspective, even in my view. But how are we responding to that? If we do not lay that ear on the ground, go down and get what the Mwananchi is saying, there's no point at any time we'll be able to address the things that are touching on them. Mwananchi is ever speaking. When they have issues, Wanjiku is speaking. Okay. When everything is happening, even across the country, and different policies are even being laid out, Mwananchi is speaking. But their perspective, is it applied when the policies are being taken up? We are looking at a point where we may be going into a referendum concerning the issues that are touching on the country. But is this what the Kenyan is really agitating for? Is this something that, in their perspective, meets their interest? Because when we do elect leaders, we move with the idea that these leaders will serve our interest going up there. Okay. But when that is not being served to the common Mwananchi, how are we going to say that we're actually serving the Mwananchi?
Thank you. Yes, Gabriela.
First, allow me to say, even if we complain and complain and complain, this government does not have national unity, national simple. First, all employment is for 2 tribes only.
Is it all or?
Almost. Yani majority. It's for Kalenjin and Kikuyus only. I'm from Baragoi, Samburu County. If you see our people, Samburu community or Turkana community employed in this government, it is 0.01%. Tell me, how can we feel sense of belonging in this government micromanaged by 2 tribes in this country? Ruto is totally messing everything.
Well, the argument can be, the counter-argument can be, Gabriela, that has been a tradition in even previous governments.
No.
I mean, if we take a look at also, an audit will reveal, of course, of the previous administration, how this has been the same and the tone adopted under the Jubilee government for the past 10 years during the presidency of Uhuru Kenyatta. So it isn't any different.
There is a great difference. During Uhuru time, you could see at least almost all tribes, they have one minister. But now, in this government, if a CS is not a Kalenjin, the PS is a Kalenjin. Tell me, what are we doing in every ministry? What will they do independently without Ruto's influence in it? There's totally nothing we are doing. And when you speak about national unity, president should be the symbol of national unity. Totally, as a Turkana, it's 0.01%. And in that 0.01%, there's nothing, no youth there, totally no youth in this government of Ruto. Tell me, then, as Gabriela Lorera, I'm 20th, how will I feel I'm in this government? If the cost of living is very high due to high taxation, if I'm not employed in this government or my community is not featured anywhere. So there is a problem in this government, and Ruto needs to sit down and relook what he promised the Mama Mboga, because what he promised the Mama Mboga is totally hypocrisy.
Okay. Yes, Mohammed?
Yes, so my colleague here says, let us hold Mr. Ruto to account based on the promises he made in his manifesto. A fair metric. Let's do that. So, Mr. Ruto during his campaigns asks the questions, tubadilishe uchumi ama tubadilishe katiba? And people, of course, respond resoundingly, tubadilishe uchumi. This committee proposes tubadilishe committee. What does Mr. Ruto do? He adopts it. He adopts the recommendations of the committee in stark contrast to what he promised Kenyans. Time and time again, during the campaign and immediately after his election, Mr. Ruto stands up and promises Kenyans, no taxes will be raised. No additional taxes will be raised on anything. What does the Finance Act do? It increases an additional 8% on fuel. On VAT on fuel. What does he do with his proposals on housing levy and continuous deductions? Today, 2.75% extra for your income is being come courtesy for the Social Health Insurance Fund. Of course, my colleague will argue that this is progressive taxation. It is good for us to rebuild our health infrastructure, which I totally agree with. The goals, or at least what we're trying to achieve, seem to be good for the good of the country. And of course, we'll buy into them. But to continue to promise that we will achieve all of these other things by expanding our economy, by expanding our tax base, and all of the other ways we could collect more revenue, as opposed to continuously coming for your paycheck, is, of course, going against the promises that he said. Thirdly, you ask the question, the government has done some part of the promises, and my colleague highlights them, the employment of the teachers, the Hustler Fund, and all of these things. Of course, positive steps. But the purpose of citizens is not to be continuously clapping for the government. That is not why we exist. Of course, we acknowledge those things. Those were promises that he'd made. If he's delivered them, good on them. Kenyans will vote him back if they think that those metrics are enough. However, our purpose is to continue to hold him to account for the things he promised which he did not deliver. That is what we're doing. That you promised a lower cost of living, you haven't delivered. Where is it? Yes.
I agree almost entirely with the sentiments of my brother here. First and foremost, we need to understand that Kenya is not in a crisis with our constitution. Actually,
so you agree we have no constitutional problem, we have an economic challenge?
Yes.
Big time. That has been my position from the onset. What I'm saying is there are particular things that are being dealt with in this country that require the attention of the Constitution and that majorly do not require the attention of the Constitution. But the position is taking advantage of these issues being sorted out to chip in some of their grievances, which is not bad. That is the politics of every day. Look at it this way. He was talking about the question of public participation. I listened keenly to the High Court judgment on the tax on the finance bill, and the issue on public participation was comprehensively addressed by the court.
Adequately
addressed, and I would challenge you, because I don't want to paraphrase what was highlighted out there, to just take your time and look up that decision by Majanja's team. It was very clear on how public participation was understood by the crafters of the Constitution and how it is being implemented and where the shortcomings are. That would be very important, particularly for those of us who intend to engage in governance issues. Secondly, he talks about President Ruto and the promises he gave and how he's achieving them. That is good. I mean, we need to have a juxtaposition of what the president promised against what he's delivering. And based on that, we need to give him tick on what he has done well and call him out on what we think is not. That I agree with. That is what every active citizen should do. But I don't like the imagination that Kenya is falling, and that when Kenya falls, then we'll be politically vindicated. It is wrong. It is not the fashion of opposition that should be done in any democracy. When President Obama was here the last time, he called out the opposition and told them, if you want your country to fail just so that the people can know you are right, then you're not a patriot. What we need to look at is Ruto doing the things he had promised he's doing? How many of them has he achieved? Is he failing in this sense? Then we call, that is, and let me tell you, Ayub, I agree with Ruto up to the extent that during the BBI, he was very clear on the question of the office of the official opposition leader. We will not agree with him, but when he made his presentation, he was very clear that he wanted the establishment of the office of the official opposition leader. Before the campaigns, during the campaigns, and even after he's been elected, he sent a letter to Parliament acknowledging why he needs, that we need to have an accountable, a properly funded office of the official opposition leader. That is why I only agree with him, that when he actually says he wants this done, he means business and ensures it is done. The modality with which he's going to execute it is immaterial to me. What is important is he actually does it. When he complained about the addition of what do you call them, the number of MPs. I mean, he was talking about
the gender proportion.
Yes, he addressed it very extensively with his letter to the Parliament. Now, these are things that are being put as part of this committee report as though nobody had discussed them earlier, when in real sense these are things that would have been dealt with without the mandamanos, without the talks, without the committee. These are things that the government had already spoken to and had agreed on the modalities through which they would have been sorted out. However, the opposition had to go through these mandamanos to achieve what they wanted to achieve. That is what I'm calling my brothers to look at. Don't fall for the bait that has been given to you.
Okay, but the creation of an office then means that you have to get the consent of the people.
Well, the fashion...
Because at the moment we have the majority and the minority sides as envisioned in the Constitution. Then there is the executive, which has no control over Parliament. I mean, depending on who is the majority and who is the minority. And a reflection more or less of what Kibaki had in 2007, being the president, but the ODM party had the majority in Parliament. What then will become of the role played by Opiyo Wandayi? Is the role ineffective? Does the president envision that the opposition leader will be more strong when the second runners-up will be present in Parliament? How will this be different from the current dispensation?
The report is fairly grey on how the boundaries within which the minority leader, the majority leader, and the official opposition leader will operate. But I think they were very smart in mentioning very clearly that the official opposition leader will not have to be a member of Parliament. That then divorces them from the approach of going towards the referendum, which I think is what they intended to achieve. And if you look at the letter by the president to Parliament, he tried to explain that the country was coming from a very difficult political campaigns, that then he would not have wanted that there would have been a referendum again. But even not looking into the details of why we are going to the referendum and whether the situation calls for going for a referendum, my concern is, on the one hand, we are talking about the cost of living. On the other, we have forgotten that we need to bring the cost of living down, and that because we need the official opposition leader in place, we are demanding for a referendum when there are actually avenues through which executing this without a referendum.
Look, you are touching on the structure of governance, I mean.
Well, but I don't think to the extent that it actually touches on Parliament and it touches on the executive and the judiciary, or even the county governments. If it actually touched to that extent that we were establishing the official opposition leader, where he's going to be a member of Parliament, then I think that would have called for a referendum. Here's a situation where...
How about the Prime Cabinet Secretary's position, entrenchment in the Constitution?
The Prime Cabinet Secretary is an appointee of the President. This would be like... a cabinet secretary, like we have right now. We have Prime Cabinet Secretary Mudavadi. We didn't have to go to a referendum for him to be there. That is exactly what the president is doing. He just wants it established in law so that then every president who comes in place do not have to have the option of I need a prime minister or I don't need a prime minister. You appoint them as a matter of law out of the under 22 cabinet secretaries is possible.
Okay. Yes, Angela, I'll come to you, Kelvin.
No, what Ascon is talking about here and what Ayub you're talking about is going too far. The Kenya Kwanza administration is very scared of facing the people. It's very scared of going into a referendum because they know what they have done to Kenyans and they know where they stand and their position is as it is. But like I had said earlier, and what I'd like to tell the Kenya Kwanza administration, it's actually maybe in their best interest because with what we've seen in history, when even the Kibaki administration had to go into a referendum just 3 years after being in office because of the agitations that were there, and today we continue to celebrate him, and Mr. Ruto likes to borrow from him a lot. But when we see a referendum coming into play, it means that there are things that have not been sorted out. We had so much going in with the Building Bridges initiative that was set out to go into a referendum. So it means that there's a lot that needs to be addressed. And when we look at the Constitution of Kenya 2010 and the circumstances at which it was passed, and now is what's guiding us today, I think there's so much that was left out in that initial drafting and the implementation of that constitution. It has brought in more inequality than equality moving on. So going into a referendum is something that we all need to agitate for as Kenyans, as even young people speaking on governance issues and even doing all this on social media platforms. I think there's more that we also need to do as young people. We need to question government more. We need now to up our game. We cannot be that lot that does not register as voters, does not show up on the day of voting. We cannot be the bloc that we are told we lie to politicians that we hype them so high, but then when it comes to the day of making a decision, then we don't make that decision. This country is not going anywhere if we do not place our finger on our hands on the table. This country, of course, we've seen with the Kenya Kwanza administration, has no interest with the young people of this country. What we need to do is be in charge of this country, get into the political spaces of this country, become a member of a political party, and in fact, Jubilee Party has begun its membership drives across the country. I urge young people to join and become members of a political party and ensure that they agitate for their issues within a political party, not as a segment of society, but as responsible citizens of this country.
Okay, yes, Emmanuel, one minute each as we close and take the feedback, starting with Emmanuel here. Go that way.
Okay, Ayub, something that is very key is that when we are looking at the governance of the country, it needs to be more of a conversation between the Mwananchi and the leaders who the Mwananchi put in power. Even in going on through the administration, it is very key for the administration to make sure it takes a snapshot of how their services and projects are being received even by the common Mwananchi. We will receive protest all the time. We will receive maandamano at any time when Mwananchi feels they are not heard, because it is the only one way that they feel that they will be heard. And we will see them in case a government in power is not really focusing on addressing the issues that are being faced by these publics. And it is very important also to apply the ideas of opinion polls that are all over the country and those that are being served, because they are very key in being able to even creating a guideline that can be able to be followed by these governments in being able to implement all their projects and even the manifestos that they have and that they coined well for the people.
Okay. Yes, Gabriela.
What I want to say is that Ruto should know is the president now. He should focus more on issues affecting Mwananchi directly. Issues to do with flood, insecurity in the northern Kenya, issues to do with the cost of living, and stop politicking everywhere. It's just sugarcoating everything and giving time limit, but at the end he's doing totally nothing. He was in Lodwar, during Tobong Lore. He said after 1 week, Kindiki will be here to speak about the daily death that is happening within the border of Turkana, Baringo, and West Pokot. But after up to now, Kindiki is not there. Then I'm left asking myself, kwani 1 week bado ijaisha?
Okay.
And I also asked Nanok, 1 week ya president yako bado ijafika, because daily our people are dying daily. And President Ruto is nowhere to be seen.
Thank you. Yes, Calvin.
Yeah, for me, I would like to clarify that let people in government not think that the cost of living refers to the price of unga being 155 and the cost of fertilizer being 3,500. In fact, if you have
2,500.
Yeah, 2,500. Thank you. So, in fact, if you were to argue in that perspective, during the swearing of the president, he clearly said himself that Russia has donated fertilizer to us. But I've not heard even in any news media house saying that this group of people are given free fertilizer. But we received donation from Russia as per the president's speech during the swearing in. So what we are trying to say, let them be honest, let them understand that the cost of living means when I have that unga at 155, I need some vegetables, I need some cooking oil, I need some salt. We are trying to say that when you try to make that the low income I have to be just, I spend it more on other things, like let's say when the cost of fuel is high, I'll spend much on fuel, I'll spend much on other activities, I'll reach a place where I can't even pay for my rent. So we are trying to say, let's not just say the cost of living is price of unga at 155 and fertilizer at 2,500.
Thank you. Yes, Mohammed.
One, I'd like to clarify that I do not think there is a single Kenyan who wants the country to collapse. We raise these issues and we speak out of love for the country. We want the country to succeed because when it succeeds, we succeed, our kids, our families, and everybody else succeeds. Secondly, to the government, cost of living has brought down regimes. Omar al-Bashir's government started crumbling because of rising bread prices, because of wheat. The French Revolution happened because of the indifference of the political elite for asking, let them have cake. So as long as this problem persists, the country will not be stable. There will constantly be cries from Kenyans calling on the government of the day to ensure that they can sustain their lives. Kenyans in this particular time are not asking for anything more than let us live in a country where we can afford school fees for our kids, where university education funding model is not changed overnight, and we cannot, and education becomes a preserve of the few and the rich and the able, where fuel prices, over 30% of fuel prices is not directly accounted for by taxes. Those are the bare minimums Kenyans are asking, and please protect the taxes that we desperately pay. Make sure that they're not stolen as rampantly as it happens.
Ms. Haskon.
Thank you, Ayub. For me, I think, as a closing remark, we have achieved a lot with this report, to the extent that it allows every hand on deck. The situation Kenya finds itself, as acknowledged by both sides of the political divide, requires that everybody takes part in the development of this country. And we take part in the manner in which the people have assigned us responsibilities. We need the government to take part in developing the country. We need the opposition alike to take part in the development of the country to the extent that they are checking on the government. If we are going to establish the office of the official opposition leader, just so that all those who campaigned under the opposition leader feel as though they are taking part in the development of the country, well and good, I support that. But to the extent that we have a constitution that provides for institutions that are able to deal with all our material issues, we need to respect that and go by that.
Yes, Angel.
Ayub, muzzling political parties does not empower this country as a government tends to think. Muzzling political parties, arresting bloggers for speaking out, arresting protesters for speaking out, is something that we cannot take this country back to. It has been a struggle for Kenyans since 1992 to ensure that there is multi-party democracy. But what we've seen with the Ruto government is exactly what Moi was doing when he was in power, muzzling and ensuring that there was no freedom of expression, there was no freedom of associating, there was no freedom to belong to a political party. And that is where Mr. Ruto is taking taking us. And we've seen with what he's doing with Jubilee Party, what he's doing in cahoots with the Speaker of the National Assembly to de-whip and decide how to run and declare a majority of Kenya Kwanza, which is not true. I think we need to protect the multi-party democracy that was fought for by Kenyans in 1992.
Thank you. Let's now sample the feedback. This is what you're saying on X. The hashtag is Daybreak. The SMS code is 22422 at Citizen TV Kenya and at Ayub Abdikadir. The first one from Engineer Lazaro says the KK government fears facing suffering Kenyans with what he says is something like referendum. At the moment, they are very much aware of how people are being radicalized by the cost of living. You can't lie all the times and expect to be welcomed by flowers. Babu Michelle K says, all that KK is saying is really forcing issues. When I see David indeed tweets and Okia Umtata talk at the same time, KICC is on sale amongst others, then you must agree the country is on autopilot. You never sell heritage, nini mbaya na sisi. Jay Musoma says the people who fought BBI loudest condemning vyeo na mamlaka are the same people who want to use parliament to create hizo vyeo na mamlaka that should be subjected to referendum because it touches on basic structure of the constitution. Azimio is right, he says. Daniel Sindani 78 says, I am disappointed. The cost of living is a thorn in Kenyans' flesh. It's real. It's not imaginary. It's hogwash to argue that demonstrations were meant for positions. Again, Jay Musoma says, Hustler Fund reduced KK government to be Shylock, to a Shylock. That's not a function of the state, but rather a private sector. Why can't we lower the Central Bank of Kenya Treasury bonds and bills to make the bids affordable to low-income earners instead of coming with funds that are unregulated? Sumancha L says, it's sad to note that even matters representation isn't captured anywhere in the recommendations tabled by the National Dialogue Committee. When will the minority groups of the Ilchamus get their voices heard? We tabled our issues and sadly they chose to ignore them. John Waigai 19 says, it's factual that this government is arrogant and does not listen to the voices of the people. Okele Mwalimu says, I sympathize with anyone who thinks that problems like unemployment can be solved by current crop of politicians. The National Dialogue Committee was a special purpose vehicle aimed at giving Ruto regime legitimacy and ample time to entrench a punitive tax regime and had nothing to do with the youth. Thanks so much, Angel Mbudia. Your time is all appreciated. Askon Kamili, much appreciated. Many thanks for your presence. Mohamed Abdullahi, thank you. Calvin Ayode, thanks to you too. Gabriela Lorere, thank you for your time as well. And Emmanuel Kotosi, thanks to you too for watching the broadcast and waking up with us here on the broadcast Daybreak. The hashtag on X was Daybreak. The SMS code is 22422 at Citizen TV Kenya and at Ayub Abdikadir. Thanks for being with us. We'll see you next Wednesday here on the broadcast by the grace of God. Till then, good morning.